Chances are, if you've heard the term card games on motorcycles, you've heard of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. It's the third Yu-Gi-Oh! Show and second Yu-Gi-Oh! Spin-off after Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. While not my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, it's still a show that's near and dear to my heart and one I can always come back to. Most people I've talked to who love this show say that their favorite arc is the Dark Signers arc, and I 100% agree. It's definitely one of, if not the darkest arc in the show, and maybe all of Yu-Gi-Oh! For those of you who haven't watched it, the Dark Signers arc involves our main cast of characters, known as the Signers, going up against a group of individuals called the Dark Signers, people who have died, but then were resurrected by an evil earthbound god in the name of revenge. Each Dark Signer has their own story, death, revenge plot, and connection with the main characters. And if you want to hear more about the Dark Signers as a group, my friend Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything has a video about the Dark Signers that you should totally check out. But in this video, I'm going to talk about my personal favorite Dark Signer, that being Carmine. Carly makes her debut at the beginning of Season 2, right after the Fortune Cup ends. She's initially introduced as a clumsy reporter who's just trying to get a scoop for her boss's newspaper. We see her try to learn more about the events that transpired during the Fortune Cup, the Signers, and the Crimson Dragon. After failing to interview Yusei, the new king, she goes for the next best option. A man whose pride is wounded and who has lost everything. That should go over well. It actually does! Through a series of events, she ends up taking care of Jack, nursing him back to health, and having a heart-to-heart conversation with him on a tower at sunset where she gives him sound advice that he actually decides to take and move forward with. It's really cool, and the best part is that they both develop. Jack decides he'll make his own path forward and become a real king, and Carly decides not to write articles that will hurt other people, and develops a crush on Jack, becoming the second member of the formal Jack Sim squad. Later on, Jack leaves Carly in fear of her getting involved or hurt in the fray of the Dark Signers. And Carly, like any teenager who's been dumped, even though she's like in her 20s and definitely older than Jack, decides to do everything in her power to not lose her connection with him. This leads to her snooping around the Arcadia movement, aka a literal cult, and getting discovered by their leader, Sayer, or Divine in the sub. She's then forced to duel him as per Yu-Gi-Oh! Tradition, loses, and because it was a psychic duel where damage is real, she gets blasted out of a 50-foot tall building and falls to her death. Oh, sorry, she falls into a purpley mist and she's definitely not dead. Just look at that lively look on her face. Everyone say thank you for kids! It's at this point where she becomes a Dark Signer, and the first thing she does is use a giant hummingbird to murder the man that just killed her. Oh, sorry, send him falling into the netherworld. Thanks for kids. Afterwards, she goes back to normal, realizes she murdered someone, and has a mental meltdown, only to be told by an acquaintance of hers, Misty, that she's become a Dark Signer, which makes her cry more. About 20 episodes later, she and Jack have their fated duel, where Carly tries to defeat Jack and then resurrect him as a Dark Signer so that they can defeat the Signers and become the Dark King and Queen, which may I add would have never happened. The Earthbound Immortals were calling the shots. They would have never allowed Senior Prom King and Queen over here to rule over the new hell they were making. Jack snaps out of the illusion Carly creates and encourages her to choose her own fate, giving her the choice to gain life points or inflict enough damage to Jack to end the duel. Carly, due to plot armor, due to realizing this isn't what she really wants, chooses to regain life points and tries to end the duel. But like any pact with a demon, there's no out once you're in, and she gets possessed by her Earthbound Immortal. Later, she's able to communicate with Jack and tells him to defeat her to avoid more people getting hurt. Jack then tries to end the duel Romeo and Juliet style, but Carly, in an absolute girl boss moment, regains enough control of her body from a literal demon to play a trap card that ends the duel in her loss. After the duel, they have a heart-to-heart about life, it's emotional, and then she dies. For about like 5 episodes, and then she's back, and the show pretends like Jack totally didn't admit he loved Carly. Thanks, Yoshida. So, I know I'm not the only one whose favorite Dark Signer is Carly. A lot of comments on Dylan's Dark Signer video mention Carly as their favorite, and the universal favorite Dark Signers of most people are usually Carly and Callan, or Kiryu in the sub, with the occasional Misty thrown in. So liking Carly is not an unpopular opinion. I already have enough of those as it stands. But when I was thinking up this video, I actually realized why exactly I think Carly is the most popular Dark Signer. Carly is one of the only Dark Signers to have their introduction and transition into a Dark Signer fully on screen. The other one is Gregor, or Bomber in the sub, but his felt a lot more rushed. I mean, he was detained after the Fortune Cup, rescued by the Dark Signers to get revenge on Goodwin, gets hung to death by the leader of the Dark Signers, you know, for kids, and gets his butt kicked by Blackwings. And even if By Black Wings wasn't written in to save the day, he still would have gotten his butt kicked by an 11-year-old. Meanwhile, Carly's journey from introduction to death to Dark Signer to death again is spread out by about like 30 episodes. Every other Dark Signer has their past, death, resurrection, and connection with their respective signers shown in flashbacks. But with Carly, we see her get introduced as a normal girl who's just trying to be a reporter. We see her develop a connection and eventual romance with Jack. We see the events that lead up to her death and even her last thoughts as she dies. And we see her get resurrected and what she immediately does afterwards. And I think seeing something happen in the present time is a lot more meaningful than having it presented in a flashback. She also has one of the more meaningful connections with her respective signer. Though one can argue Callan has the most personal connection, as he and Yusei were really close ride-or-die friends until he went crazy and starved to death in jail. Back on track though, Carly and Jack had a really meaningful relationship and both changed each other for the better. Because of Carly's words, Jack was able to move forward, make amends with Yusei, and strive to become a real king. He forged meaningful bonds and became more humble, which makes him really likable. And this is almost fully because of Carly. He even tells Goodwin that he was saved by one woman's love. Carly also changes because of Jack, and not just because she falls in love with him. She realizes how much she was hurting after losing it all, and decides not to use her articles to hurt other duelists anymore. I also think she has the coolest deck of the Dark Signers. We see Carly duel before she turns into a Dark Signer, and she uses Fortune Fairies. Then, when she duels as a Dark Signer, her cards become Fortune Ladies, more mature and evil versions of her former deck, which reflect her change. She also has the best look. Seriously, the drip is fire. Carly is a fan favorite character, and I know I'm not the only one who wishes she got to do more after the Dark Signers arc. From seasons 3 to 5, she just follows Jack and occasionally Team 5Ds around, and together with 2 other girls, formally forms the Jack Simp Squad. I know 5Ds was supposed to end after the Dark Signers arc, and that the writership to have Shin Yoshida take charge kinda hurt her character, along with the fact that her Japanese VA was part of a cult, which limited her role further. But for what we got, Carly was a strongly written character, the best Dark Signer, and the closest thing Yugioh had to an actually competent romance. We were so close, Yugi Bros. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and let me know what you think of Carly down below, or just who your favorite Dark Signer is. This is Queen of Penguins saying peace out and happy Pride Month!